Welcome, everybody. My name is Andrew Patricia. At BizLaunch, we teach business owners and entrepreneurs the steps they need to take to build a profitable business of their own. And we believe that webinars are great lead generators. So what I'm going to share with you today are how do you host your own webinars? Let's say this is something you've been thinking about or something potentially you could do in the future. I'm going to share some tips with you on how to run your own webinars. Why would you even host webinars? Well, there's a couple of really important reasons. They are very, very convenient. So I'm sitting at home now in my library and I'm running this, and I can run it from anywhere in the world. It's really, really convenient. I've run webinars while I was traveling in Portugal. I've run webinars while I was in my home in Florida. I've run webinars while I was in the Caribbean. Really, the only thing that limits you is your imagination. So they're very, very convenient, and you can host them from anywhere. The other big advantage of webinars is that they're affordable. I'll give you some idea of prices a little bit later on, but you can use free platforms or you can pay for a platform, and it's really not expensive, very, very affordable. So for those of you that have maybe run some live events or some live seminars or some workshops, you'll realize very, very quickly this is a great way to educate people. They're affordable, they're very measurable, and I think this is something key that people don't always realize, is that when you register for a webinar, we've got a lot of information about you. We know who you are, we have your email address, we have your phone number, you've got all this type of information. And the nice thing about webinars is that as long as people register, and this is the key, as long as people register, you've got information. So you can communicate with them later on if you want to. We don't in the case of BizLaunch, but you could do that. And that's one of the big advantages, I think, with any marketing. If you can measure it, I like it. And webinars are measurable. And the other thing you can do is you can generate leads. You know, if you sell a product or a service, it's a great opportunity at the end of a webinar to tell people about your product, about your service, and it's a great way to sell. As long as you educate people, and I think that is the key thing. Whenever you're running a webinar, always remember you've got to be giving people really good value. You've got to be giving them value. You've got to give them information that they would have to look for themselves, and you're going to be giving them for free. So why should you and I even think about hosting webinars? And let me tell you why. I think webinars are very, very engaging. You can communicate with your audience. You can get them involved. They're such a great opportunity to really engage your customers or even potential customers. Let's say, for example, you've got a list of, I don't know, 100 people, 50 people, 20 people that have been interested in your products or services in the past. You can get them online and you can engage them. You can share video with them. You can share spreadsheets with them. You can share presentations with them. There are just so many opportunities for you to connect with people. So they're very, very engaging. The other thing is they're very educational. And I'm not sure if you like me, but I believe that often marketing is about educating. When people understand what product or service you sell, when they realize that you really understand your topic, that you really understand the industry, that you really understand the customer, they're going to become better buyers. And you've got to understand this. I think that webinars give you that opportunity to build up this trust. These people seem like they know what they're doing. We like them. We will buy from them. So that's one of the big advantages. The third thing is that webinars are very, very interactive. You know, the nice thing about a webinar is you can ask questions like some of you have already started doing. You can ask questions. You can make comments. You can do so many different things. And this is really key, is that you've got that opportunity to educate people. And I want you to understand this, that education is really the key to selling. Education is the key to selling. So they're educational, they're interactive. Also, you can repurpose content, which is a big, big advantage. Once you've hosted a webinar, what you can do is you can turn that into an MP4 and you can share it. You can share it on your Facebook page. You can share it on your Twitter. You can share it on your YouTube. There are just so many opportunities there to be able to share this content. So I really like that about webinars. The other thing is the short lead time. It is very, very easy. Online, I could show you in a couple of minutes how easy it is to set up a webinar. It's really simple. It take me a couple of minutes. I would have a new webinar set up, and I'll show you the platform a little bit later on so you can see it. It's really, really simple and easy to work with. And really, I think that is one of the key advantages, is the simplicity of the technology. So one of the questions people often ask me is, what platform should I use? And this is not a simple answer, but I'm going to give you my opinion, because the advantage with us is, because we've been doing webinars for such a long time, is that I think we've made all the mistakes. So we've made all the mistakes, so you don't have to make any. So on the screen, I've got the 4 key platforms that I would encourage you to use. The first one, and I think probably the most effective one, is GoToWebinar. But let me just say something about GoToWebinar. I believe that you need to be quite serious about running webinars to use GoToWebinar. And the reason I'm saying that is that it's going to cost you a fee every month. So we spend about $300 a month for our GoToWebinar, but then we get hundreds of people registering for our webinars and hundreds of people attending our webinars. So for us, it's a great platform. It's very effective. It's very, very simple. It integrates with a lot of APIs. It can integrate with a website. I find it very, very easy to use and very easy to learn. So once you get going, the big thing is get going in the beginning. Start using the platform, start understanding the platform, and then using it effectively. So one of the strategies you could use is maybe, for example, just to go to the cheapest version, then upgrade as you start getting more attendees. So GoToWebinar, brilliant, very, very effective, and I really like the platform. The second one is WebEx. And in the case of BizLaunch, we used WebEx probably for about 8 years. I think it was about 8 years. And let me tell you, it was a really, really good platform. I really liked it. I liked how to work. But the problem I found with it is that integrating it, it was one of the biggest challenges. It doesn't work with other stuff that easily. It's also not that adaptable. But when it comes to security, I think WebEx is really, really great. And what we found with WebEx is a lot of our large clients were using WebEx. And that was a big advantage because they trusted it. It's owned by Cisco. So it's a very, very robust platform. But again, very expensive. I think it used to cost us between let's say about $400 and $500 a month to use WebEx. So it gets a little bit expensive, especially if you're running webinars on a regular basis and maybe not charging for them, then it becomes an expensive platform. But let's say you were looking for something free. Let's say you decided, you know what, I want to start doing free events, and then later on, I will start paying. So there are a couple of options for you. One, you can use Google Hangouts. Google Hangouts is free. You can get a group online, and you can present a webinar to them. You can share your desktop, you can share applications, and it's very, very simple. So I encourage you to check that out. Or another one is to use Facebook Live. Facebook Live could be another place where you could start. Again, it's about communicating with your audience. It's about speaking to potential customers out there and doing that. Somebody's asked me a question here. What is my opinion about using Skype? Skype is okay. Again, you can't have that many people online. I think probably a maximum of about 10. but it works wonderful. You can share your desktop, you can share applications. Actually, that's interesting that you ask about Skype. I ran a webinar for a client in Portugal. So what they did was I used Skype. So I shared my desktop and they broadcasted in their office. So Skype works. You can either have 10 people online and communicate with them, or you can broadcast it loud. That's the way we did it. And then they asked us questions. So it worked really, really well for us. So it really depends on your business. So check out Skype. I don't think it's a bad thing at all. Somebody's saying Skype for business takes a lot more people. I need to check it out. I didn't even realize you could use Skype for business for big groups. But there's an example. So do some research, go online, check out Skype. It may be the answer. It works really, really well. And I find that a lot of people in Europe especially use Skype more, I think, than in North America. That's just my opinion. And then it's not new, but it's been around for a while, called Webinar Jam. I have never used it before, but I see a lot of ads around for it, and it is quite affordable. So if some of you wanted to do that, it would really work well. So I encourage you to check it out. And I'm going to give you some of the questions that people are asking. I've got on the slides, so I'm going to give you the answers to those questions. So the first thing, and this is really, really key, is before you decide to run a webinar, always think about your target audience. You know, who are the people that you want to go after? And I think this is really key with any marketing, with any content you're creating out there, is always trying to identify who is the ideal audience. Who am I creating this content for? Who's my target audience? And I think that is the starting point. The starting point of any webinar is to decide who the target audience is, because you've got to understand, if you create content that's relevant to your audience, they're going to enjoy your webinars. They're going to refer people. They'll come back to them. So just be very, very careful. And we have found over the years is that just tweaking a topic has a big, big influence on how many people sign up for a webinar. So this is what I encourage you to do, is to develop an interesting topic and description. And this is how you find the interesting topics. Go online and search for the most popular blog posts for your target market. So go online, look at other people's blogs, look at people in similar industries, and see which are the most interesting blog posts, because that'll give you an idea of some excellent webinar topics. So think of that. You know, what are the webinar topics that your customers are reading? And blogs are really, really good for that. The other one is ask your clients. You know, go to your clients and say, you know, we're going to come up with these educational webinars to help educate our customers about using products and services. And do you have any ideas of which topics they'd be interested in? And we find, specifically with small business owners, is that the marketing topics are the most interesting. So anything marketing related, anything online marketing, any free tools, things like that are what small business owners love. And you will see, if you go through our topics, often we'll have those topics regularly. And the reason we have those topics regularly is because we get a lot of signups. In our case, I often vary the topics, because my goal is to educate you so that you can become a better business owner. So sometimes I go after very, very popular topics, other times not so popular, but my objective is different. My objective is to educate you to become a better business owner. And let me tell you what we have found over the years is how to topics work the best. How to grow your business, how to market your small business, how to increase your traffic to your website. Those are the most popular topics. So if you're looking for a great topic, that's what you want to choose. You want to choose a how-to. People love how-to topics. They work brilliantly, they're effective. So that could be one of your strategies. One of your strategies is to start off with some great how-to topics that your customers will be interested in. But really, the topic, the heading, the description are really key. And I want you to understand the importance of this, of choosing the right topic. It's really going to help you become more effective. So let me just show you the platform that we use. So we use GoToWebinar, and you'll see how easy it is. It's all set up. What you do is you go in here. So I go in here, and what I do is I set up my title of my webinar in there. I put in my description of my webinar in there. I put in my date over here. I put in the time, and there it's done. It's really very, very easy. You know, it's a simple process that I use, and it works brilliantly. Okay, so there's an example. There's an example of how easy this platform is to use. In 1 minute, I could have it all set up. So I could have it 1 minute, it could all be set up, easy to run, easy to host. So it's really not difficult at all. So, and you got to understand this, that this is what you want to be doing. Often I get asked is, what is the best time to host webinars? So I'm going to, actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to share and ask you that same question. I'm going to share and ask you that same question. What do you think is the best time to host webinars? You know, so let's actually start off by asking you, what is the best day to run webinars? So for you, what is the best day to run webinars in your opinion? What is the best day to run webinars? There you go. So there's an example of how you can do polls. So there's a very, very good example. So most of you are online are saying Tuesday. Some of you are saying Wednesday. Some people are saying Tuesday through Thursday. And I agree with you 100%, is that the majority of the most successful webinars are on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Actually, in the case of BizLaunch, we have found that Tuesday webinars are the most effective. So for us, Tuesday webinars are the most effective. And again, it really depends on your audience. So it really depends on your audience who it is. Actually, it's really interesting that when I did research with you people, the majority of you said Wednesday. So there you go. So really, that's the way to do it, is try and identify which days are the best for your clients. 14% of you said Monday, 24% of you said Tuesday, and 59% of you said Wednesday. So there's an example. So if I was doing research, these are the type of things I would be doing. So the next question is, what time is the best to run webinars? And again, these are the type of questions you want to ask your clients. And it's really interesting that we have found over the years that the best time to run a webinar is between about 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. So that's the time that we have identified. But again, it really depends on your audience. So this is what you want to be doing, is you want to speak to your customers and say, listen, we're going to be running some webinars. What is the best time? And it's really, really interesting now that I've collected the responses here, is that 22% of you say that 11 a.m. is the best time, and 56% of you say 2 p.m. So there's an example of how you find out exactly what is the right time. But we have found that Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern, so I'm in the Eastern time zone, we have found that to be the most effective. So when I want to get the best attendance to a webinar, that's the typical time I would run it. And we've tested it over the years. We used to run ours at 1 p.m. Eastern. That was also quite good. But and the reason 2 p.m. works, because it works both on the left coast and the right coast. So if you in the west and you in the east, it works both times. And that's why I think it's very, very convenient. If any of you are running webinars for people in Europe or Asia, that's a different idea. You'd have to do research on that. but I'm speaking mainly about running webinars in North America. So that's what we have found over the time. So let me give you a couple of tips about marketing webinars, because there is nothing more frustrating than showing up at a webinar and there's 2 people registered or 5 people registered. We never have that. But you know what? You don't want to have low numbers. It is really frustrating when you have low numbers. So let me give you a couple of tips of what we have learned over the years, and I think a great tip for you too. We have found the best way to market webinars is email marketing. So that's what we have found. Again, we're in a different situation maybe than most of you, is that we have an email database, but even our clients, the clients that we run webinars for, we have found that email marketing is the best option for them. So really you want to build a database. That's really the key thing. The other place you can share, and I encourage you to do this, is share it on your Facebook page, share it on Twitter, share it on your LinkedIn page, maybe get a bunch of affiliates, other businesses that can refer people to you. So we've got a big advantage across North America. A lot of small business centers, centers that work with small business owners, are linked to our webinar. So a lot of people link, share our webinars, obviously because they're free, but a lot of people do that. So that's the type of thing you want to do, is you want to get other people to be able to share your webinar. So let me give you the way we do things, or the way we found to be the most effective, is that, look, we run webinars every week, so it doesn't always apply to us. But let's say I was running a webinar once a month. Let's say I was doing that. I was going to be running a webinar once a month. What would my system be? The starting point is about 2 weeks before a webinar. So 2 weeks before a webinar, that's when I believe you should start marketing. So 2 weeks before a webinar, you set it up, you start sending out emails, you start posting on social media. That's what you do. And then a week before the webinar, you send out another email. We find that 2 weeks before the webinar, we get a few registrations. A week before the webinar, we get much more registrations. And the day of the webinar, we get a ton of registration. So when we send out our weekly email, a lot of you will get it, and that's when you'll register. And again, our market may be different. We are selling to small business owners. So I find that the later you communicate with them, the better your registrations. And you want to get a lot of registrations. That's got to be your focus. Remember, attendance is not that important. But let me give you an idea. For the amount of people that registered for today's webinars, of the people that signed up, 50% of people have attended. So that's really, really interesting. But our attendance rate is quite high. A lot of people get between 25 and 33%. So typically when I speak to clients, this is what I say to them. I say, if 1,000 people sign up for a webinar, 300 people will probably show up. That's what I say to my client. So understand that it's not really about the amount of people that show up. It's really about the amount of people that register. Because you got to understand, if I register for your webinar, you've got my information. You can communicate with me. Even though I didn't show up, you can still send me information. And we find that 60 minutes before a webinar is also a good time to send out an email. So these are some of the strategies we've used. So if, for example, I'm doing a client webinar, let's say I'm doing a sponsored webinar, this will be the process I'll go through. 2 weeks before the event, I'll send out an invite. A week before, I'll send out the day before, usually the day of the webinar, and then 60 minutes before. So, and we find when that happens, we get a great turnout and we get a great show up rate. So this is what we've learned over the years. So I encourage you to test it. During your webinar, there's massive opportunity to interact with people. I often interact a lot, not so much today's webinar because I'm trying to educate you, but there are so many opportunities to do so many things. I sometimes do financial statements on webinars. I sometimes will connect our webcam during webinars. I will sometimes ask questions. I will sometimes do polls like I did today, for example. And that's an interesting thing that you can do on a regular basis, is just run a poll, ask a bunch of questions, and it's very, very interesting. I mean, I use that example of the webinar that we ran earlier on. And there you go. I mean, the poll that we ran earlier on, 56% of people say that running a webinar at 2 in the afternoon Eastern time is their favorite time, and that 50% of people, 59% of people like webinars on Wednesdays. This is really useful for me when I'm planning my webinars, and this gives me really useful information. But you can really ask anything. You can ask people how much they spend on marketing. You can ask people what color they like. You can ask, there's just so many things you can ask people during a webinar. And I encourage you to do this. Make it interactive. If you've got small groups, you can unmute everybody. Our webinars, the groups are much too big. So if I had to unmute all of you, it would be absolute chaos. But the reality is, if I had 5 people online or 10 people online, I could easily unmute you people, and I could then have this discussion. You could ask questions. I could see you. We could interact. And these are some of the things that you can be doing. So a great way to connect with people and a great way to build relationships. Now, once the webinar's done, there's also a great marketing opportunity there. The great marketing opportunity there is that now you can send your customers a thank you note. And the nice thing is you can thank everybody. You can thank people that attended, and all of you will receive an email from BizLaunch saying, thanks for attending our webinar today. So you'll get that. And then you thank people for registering. Different emails, you can brand them, you can change them, you can do all of those things. You can send a thank you straight after the event. You can send it a week later. There are just so many opportunities to interact with people. You can follow up and phone them and say, hi, I see that you registered for our webinar. Do you have any questions? Can we send you a recording? Can we send you the slides? All of these things open up opportunity. And the key thing, like I mentioned earlier on, is the fact that you can repurpose it. You can repurpose it on Facebook, YouTube, your website. You can repurpose it anywhere. And if any of you've watched some of our past recordings, you've seen us repurposing it on different platforms. And it's really, really interesting how many of the likes or how many people watch our recordings. We get thousands and thousands of people watching our recording. So it's a great way to do things. So let me just summarize, and then I'm going to attend. Lots of you have got questions, which I'm going to attend to. One of the key things here is develop a plan. Be very, very clear. When you create a webinar, just be very, very clear. Create a plan that you're going to be using. So set a date. For example, we usually, with our clients, usually about 6 weeks before the webinar, we set up the date, then we have practice sessions, then we finalize the slides, and that's the process we go through. But I would encourage you to run them regularly, maybe one a month, or even like us, we run one a week, and it works really well for us. So that's the first thing. Develop a plan and set specific goals to run a webinar. Secondly, choose the technology. You can use Skype, you can use Google Hangouts, you can use GoToWebinar, you can use WebEx. It really doesn't matter which one you use, but choose one. Practice with it. Maybe get trial versions. Just try it out in-house. Learn how to use the technology. It's really not that complicated. Usually when the technology doesn't work, it's because you and I forget something, or I forget to click a button, or whatever it is. That's typically what happens, or in my case anyway. Target your audience. Be very, very clear who you are going after. So our webinars are for small business owners. That's the only topic we present webinars on. But that's the only one we have expertise in. And that's really our key thing. So identify your target audience. The next thing is really key, is make sure you have a very, very clear idea of what topics your clients want to attend and develop a great heading. The heading of the webinar is the most important thing. You know, when we get massive numbers of people registering for our webinars, it's because of the title of the webinar. We know if which topics are going to work. So let's say, for example, I get a client, want to run webinars. I know which topics to go after because we have topics that we know get thousands of registrants, and we have topics that we know we get hundreds of registrants. We decide. Also, market your webinar. So come up with a little marketing plan 2 weeks before the time, a week before the time, day before, the day of. Make sure you get other people to promote the webinar for you. Use Facebook advertising, maybe put on LinkedIn, but use your platforms, and slowly this will grow. You know, in the beginning, you have small numbers. Like us, when we started, I don't remember how long ago we started webinars, maybe 10 years ago. When we started, we used to get small numbers. Now we get hundreds of people. So market your webinar, interact with people, you know, use interaction. I actually have this habit. I didn't do it today, but typically when I present a webinar, I stand up. So I'm standing up in front of my computer and I'm presenting like I would do any live seminar. So that's typically what I do, because when you're standing up, you can project your voice better, which is a really good strategy. And it's really easy. I don't use I don't use a camera, but any one of you could use cameras. I mean, if you want to use a camera, I'll show you how the camera works a little bit later on, but I use a camera. I mean, I can use a camera if I want to, so I can record live and speak to people and interact. I just find that sometimes it's a little bit distracting for the presenter because you're looking in one direction and the audience is looking in a different direction. It can be a little bit distracting. So that's the only reason I don't always use a camera. So you can interact, you can follow up, and the most important thing for webinars to work, like any marketing, is perseverance. You've got to understand it is a great way to connect with people, both locally and internationally, but you've got to persevere. So here's my advice to you. Maybe webinars are a great marketing tool for you. What I encourage you to do is to test it. You know, create a simple webinar, test it in hours, see how it works. It may become the best lead generation tool for you. And once you have a big enough audience, then you can start monetizing. So one of our plans for the future is to run webinars where we charge a little amount of money for people to attend, but then we'll share much more content. We'll make it more interactive. We'll do all of those things. And that is my wish for every single one of you, that you start running webinars, that you perfect it, that you build this wonderful business that you absolutely love. That is my wish for every single one of you. And for some of you, using webinars is probably the best marketing tool you can ever use.